to Around the Campfire with AmeriCamp, the ultimate summer camp podcast. I'm Jen and I'm here with Sam Thorley today. Hi, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
You're welcome. It's great to have you. I think it's fun to have kind of different guests on, and it allows our kind of listeners to find out a little bit more about everyone's AmeriCamp background and a little bit more about what kind of camps they went to and stuff like that as well. So do you want to give everyone a little bit of a backstory on you?
Yeah, for sure. So I currently operate the Contracts and Tenders partnership for our company. Before this, I basically ran our NCS contract that we had as part of the company. Some of the listeners might have heard of NCS through college and school. It may have been offered. Before that, more importantly, I actually had my first role with the company as part of AmeriCamp. So I worked for AmeriCamp for the AmeriCamp brand for around a year. I only got that role because I actually attended camp back in 2016.
Amazing. So it'd be great to kind of chat to you a little bit more about your AmeriCamp experience sort of back in 2016. I know that you went to Jewish camp, which is something that is really interesting. We can kind of dive into a little bit.
For sure.
So do you want to share a bit about your background, what drew you to the idea of doing AmeriCamp in general, and a little bit about your camp?
Yeah, so I think it was around about my first year of university. It's a long time ago now. 2016 is quite a while ago. So just thinking back, I think it was around my first year of university, and I knew that I wanted the opportunity to go and see different places around the world, specifically America for me. And it seemed like the perfect opportunity to not only do something that would, help a community out and actually feel like I'm doing something worthwhile, but also get to experience a new culture at the same time. It almost seemed like the perfect opportunity for me to do both of those things, whilst obviously earning some money that I could eventually use, for me personally anyway, use to travel after that. So that's kind of what brought me to the AmeriCamp experience and what I guess led me to that.
Amazing. So you were a general counsellor when you were at camp, weren't you?
I was, yeah. So basically it was a little bit different for me. I was originally hired by a traditional camp as a specialist. Basically it was a very unique experience what happened for me. I was basically given the opportunity to move to a Jewish camp as a general counsellor. They were desperately in need, as the summer was already starting, they were desperately in need of additional general counsellors. So I was basically given the opportunity to transfer over, which I thought would just be a better fit for me. I kind of originally thought I wanted to do specialist at camp, and then actually realised once I had that opportunity, I wanted to do that general counsellor role. So it just seemed like a better fit for me, and took them up on the offer after a quick interview and transferred over in a couple of days.
So you moved from your kind of previous camp to a kind of new role. Did you find it quite difficult moving? Obviously, you said it was quite early in the season, so I imagine camp maybe hadn't started yet.
Yeah, exactly that actually. So it's, I guess you build yourself up, and you've got weeks and months as you're preparing to go to camp, and you've been hired and you've researched your camp. And then for me, it was almost I wouldn't say a spanner in the works, because I was still excited. It was still a new adventure, but I had a few days to kind of prepare and say, okay, this is my new camp, this is where I'm going. I guess the only difference was I did actually arrive, and this is quite specific to my experience, I guess, but I arrived 2 weeks before camp was, it was about 3 or 4 weeks before camp was actually starting. So I arrived at the same time as a lot of returners. So for the first 2 weeks, I was actually the only new
first
timer. So that was unique in itself, because we were kind of getting the camp ready for the summer, which is typically not the jobs that you would ever do as a first timer. You would turn up, you would have some practice, or depending on which camp you go to, and then you'd obviously go ahead and start for the summer. So I was doing those those second, third, fourth timer unique things to get the camp prepped early. But that was kind of the only difference. And in fact, I suppose for me, it was almost a bit of a blessing, you could say, because I got to meet people before camp started, and it got rid of that anxiety for me of a brand new camp that I wasn't sure I was going to go to, and it was all kind of fresh for me. So yeah, it definitely helped in the long run, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would have been potentially a different situation if you had moved camps and like the kids were already there and everyone kind of had their kind of groups of friends and things like that. So yeah, I think definitely sort of universe has kind of put things in the stars for your new camp. So that's great. But yeah, we spoke about how your initial camp was traditional and your new camp was actually a Jewish camp. So do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of what activities they had, a bit of your sort of day in the life of what that was like for you in your kind of new role?
Yeah, for sure. So the camp my new camp that I attended was Blue Star Camps in North Carolina. To be honest, the day-to-day stuff was the exact same as you would find at a traditional camp. We were doing the exact same activities, so obviously that's going to slightly depend on which camp you go to. But for the most part, we still we had a giant lake, so there was plenty of water activities each day. We had your typical high ropes, low ropes, all of that. There was lots of art. One of my personal favourite activities was pottery. So for some reason, I just fell into this summer of attending pottery quite often, which tickled me for the summer. So yeah, and then day to day, as a general counsellor, so I was actually working with the youngest campers, so 6 to 7 year olds. So for me, I had a co-counsellor that I worked with, and we would stay in the cabin with 6 to 7 year olds. Some of those campers were there for the full, I believe it was 2 months. But so we had some of the campers were there for the full time that the camp was ongoing. We had some that were there for a couple of weeks. So we kind of had different campers come in and out of our 6 camper group, if you like. But myself and my co-counsellor were consistently in the same cabin and working together.
So it was an overnight camp. Did you do day camp at all, or was it just exclusively?
It was exclusively overnight, for the whole time.
I think one of the biggest sort of misconceptions, I guess, with Jewish camps, and again, it definitely comes under that religious camp bracket. I think like a lot of our participants, when they're doing their applications, are like super apprehensive from kind of putting down religious camps, because it is such a kind of wide spectrum. And I think a lot of people assume that if you're going to a religious camp, it's sort of weaved into absolutely every aspect of the camp. Like all of your activities, for example, are kind of focused. So for example, with you saying pottery, I think a lot of people think if they're doing arts and crafts, it has to be kind of religious topics or that kind of thing. But for you, you're saying that it really wasn't like that at all. Yeah,
absolutely. So I'm no different to a lot of people who will apply, and you see that as an option, and it's an immediate no for you, because whether you're not religious yourself and you make that assumption, I was no different to that. I did the exact same thing, thinking it wouldn't be the right camp for me. And like you've just kind of touched on, that there was an assumption there for me that the activities would be different. Once I was given the opportunity and I actually spoke to the camp and they offered me the opportunity to swap over, it was almost immediate that I realised that those misconceptions that I had were just not true. Meeting the staff, and you could immediately tell, and as soon as I'd looked at the camp online, it was like, okay, this is actually not that different, and the things that I'm thinking about this camp just aren't true. And it was kind of straight away as soon as I arrived. I suppose there was 2 sides to it. The first side being that, like we touched on before, and like I said, the activities, the day-to-day, even the campers themselves are no different than you find at a traditional camp or a day camp or a specialist camp. It's pretty much the same. The only difference I guess would be the uniqueness of the camp itself. There would be prayers before each meal, but it's not like and again, it comes to those assumptions of what you would assume a prayer would be before a meal. And actually, it's banging on the tables, everybody's singing their lungs out, and it's hard not to get engrossed in it, even though you may not follow that religion yourself. Personally, I'm not Jewish, so I didn't understand at the start what we were singing about or anything, and you do become engrossed in that. So yeah, it was things like the prayers before dinner. We would have service. I believe it was once a week, maybe. We would have the Shabbat dinners. So yeah, it's. I went in with an open mind, and you quickly realize that it's all part of the camp experience.
Yeah, like I completely agree. Like from my camp, I was special needs, but a lot of our campers were Jewish, so. Yeah. We didn't necessarily have as much kind of Jewish faith within our kind of days. It was more to do with like dietary requirements and things like that, and we had a lot of them were younger adults who didn't necessarily like kind of actively practice faith maybe as much as they would. So it is really interesting.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it's important to point out that there's no there wasn't for me anyway, but and I'm sure it's the same with every religious camp, regardless of what religion the camp is. There's no pressure to engage in anything that you don't want to. So for me, turning up, if you don't want to sing the prayers before you have a meal, you don't have to. If you don't want to engage in the ceremony or the prayers that are being said, you don't have to. It's important to remember that fundamentally you've been hired as a camp counsellor, and you are there to make sure that, I guess if you're a general counsellor like I was, that the campers are safe and that they're having fun, and that you're, the best possible counsellor that you can be to ensure that the campers go away having the best summer of their life. It's like you I guess you said it yourself, it's that additional extra that you can choose to engage in if you want to, and you don't have to if it's not for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's some about the kind of like qualities and things like that. I think acceptance is the biggest thing across whatever camp type you go to, whether it's specialist, whether it's religious, whether it's special needs. You just need to sort of have like a really open mind and be kind of really accepting of like anything additional that maybe you wouldn't be accustomed to at home. The whole point of the summer is that you're trying something new, and that you're sort of again seeing what fits, and I think it's just again getting that full kind of exploration being out in the US.
Yeah, I think it's that stretches across regardless of religious camps. Any camp, it's important that you are open. It's such a new experience. It's unlike anything that I've ever done before. As much preparation as you put yourself through, you'll still arrive and you'll still say, wow, this is crazy. So it's exactly as you said, it stretches to every single camp, regardless of which camp you go to. You will have that experience, and you need to be as open and as accepting for everything that goes on as possible, because that's the way that you will have the best summer.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think with camp it is just such an opening, accepting space, and you just need to kind of bring that with you and apply that to any differences that your camp's going to have, like whether it's again doing like a religious prayer, or it's you're working with special needs and you've got a camper that maybe like adjusts to communication in a certain way. It's just all about really sort of diving into the experience head first, and really kind of being open to everything that camp has to offer.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the most important part, and that's how you will end up having the best summer. It's also, you also need to be careful of, again, going back to what we've said before about those misconceptions. I mean, for me, at my camp, we were allowed to show tattoos, you were allowed to show piercings. So again, you have this idea of what camp's going to be like. And the best thing that you can do is treat it, like you said, with an open mind, and not have those preconceptions, because it will typically, for the better, be a different experience than you imagine.
Yeah, because I think, again, with religious camps, I would just have assumed like, oh, you need to be super conservative,
Oh, of
like,
course,
oh, you
yeah.
need to have everyone's like hair needs to be up, or like you can't have tattoos showing, or piercings need to be removed. Like that's just something I would assume. And then I think, again, if you're applying or you're looking at camp types and you maybe like have tattoos that show, or you are like expressive, you might be kind of caught off in the fact that, oh, that's not something that kind of is what you want to do, or that's maybe not something that would clash with kind of how you express yourself. And it's great to hear that that's not really the case.
It was a surprise for me, to be honest. A welcome surprise with someone with tattoos and with piercings. But yeah, it kind of caught me off guard. I assumed I was going to have to potentially cover up my tattoos and obviously take piercings out. And that, like you said, that will be the case for some camps, and that's just part of the experience. It doesn't take anything away. But yeah, it was a welcome surprise for me to go to a Jewish camp with the idea that I was going to have to do that, and actually didn't have to.
So with your summer in general, what were some of the kind of most memorable experiences that you had from doing the AmeriCamp program?
Yeah, so there's one in particular for me, and I believe, as far as I'm aware, a lot of camps do this. It was an event called Colour War.
So I actually didn't do Colour War, and
Okay.
I feel like I have the biggest FOMO about it. Like genuinely, everyone's like, "Oh, we should recreate it," and I'm like, "Yes," because I really want to do it, and I'm really sad that we didn't.
You have heard from other people this happen at other camps?
I have, but I think it would be quite helpful for you to kind of explain a little bit to people sort of what it is, and then sort of obviously about what it was like at your camp as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, it was essentially a day where the entire camp, not just your age group, but the entire camp is basically split into 4 teams, which were 4 colours, hence Colour War. There was a whole range of games throughout the entire day, activities, games, challenges, the whole camp in your teams compete towards to earn points throughout the day, and obviously one of the teams wins at the end. I was very fortunate that I was actually chose to basically be our mascot for one of those, for one of the colours, for one of the teams, for our age range. So you had mascots for each colour, for each age, throughout the day. It was all very secretive. It's basically, for our camp anyway, it was the biggest event of the entire summer. The kids and campers absolutely love it. It's the best day possible for them. So it's basically kept as secretive as possible. They don't know which day it's going to happen. Equally, the counsellors also don't know which day it's going to happen.
So you would just like wake up in the morning and it would be like, oh, it's Colour Wars Day. I feel like it's like Christmas. But
Exactly. It was like that for everybody else. For me, because I was in this mascot role, I actually had to spend a week in secret creating a cape.
Oh my god!
So I had this massive cape, and actually I think I ended up making a poncho. It was this huge poncho with decoration all over it. It was all super secretive in this little basement that we all snuck off to on an evening and created these outfits. So I was actually aware of which day it was going to happen. Nobody else across the entire camp had any idea, like I say, including counsellors.
I just have this image of you like sneaking off from your cabin to make your little cape in a basement. That's so funny.
It's exactly what was happening. As soon as the campers were in bed, sneak off and start working on this little project. But it was the same of the morning as well. So you wake up and it's your responsibility to wake up your cabin and wake up I guess all of the cabins in the surrounding area and announce that it's Colour War. And the look on the campers' faces is just crazy. They are absolutely ecstatic. It's like the best day of their entire summer. And for me, that was super special to have the whole camp come together, all age ranges, working together for different activities. You can really see what it means for those campers and the enjoyment that they get out of it. But equally, for me as a counsellor, the amount of enjoyment I got out of it as well. It was the best day ever.
I feel like I would be so competitive. I'd be like, it's amazing, we're having fun, but like if we don't win, I'm gonna scream.
Absolutely, yeah. I was the exact same.
That sounds so fun. I definitely think we need to redo an office equivalent, because I need to get involved in that.
Yeah, agreed.
So obviously that was such a kind of high in terms of your kind of camp summer. Was there any points that were maybe like a little bit more challenging, even for you or like your kind of fellow staff members? Not even just for being at a religious camp, but just kind of camp in general was obviously quite intense.
Yeah, definitely. So I'd had a little bit of previous experience with working with children, more so in a sports capacity and teaching. I taught basketball for some younger children on the lead up to camp. So that was kind of my only experience. I didn't necessarily have experience of being away and sort of an overnight stay with campers. So for me, the biggest challenge was the intensity of the summer. It's very important to remember that for 2 months you have these campers. They depend on you, especially for me with the 6 and 7 year olds. They really depend on you. You're their parent for that summer, but equally you've got to balance that with making sure that they're having the most fun possible.
Yeah,
it's really intense. It's long days. It's hard work. However, and kind of for me that was the biggest challenge, was that intensity. However, because of that intensity, it was the most rewarding thing that I've ever done. You can see at the end of camp, when you're saying goodbye to those campers, just how much fun they've had, how they've really looked up to you for that entire journey. And you can see what it means as they're crying when they're waving goodbye.
I feel like I cried so much on my last day of camp. Like, I think because I was also a general counsellor, so I think obviously this is camp dependent, but with specialists you're more than likely, yes, you see a lot of the same kids all the time, but with a general counsellor you're like, you see them all day, you're in the same cabin. So when I was leaving I was like, oh my god, my children. Like, I was so emotionally invested, and I was just like, it was amazing, but I had like the saddest plane ride home.
I was the exact same. The worst, I want to say worst, but the moment for me was right before all of the campers were leaving. We actually had a fire pit. I think we had to write down, or we basically went around all the campers and the counsellors and said something that we were grateful for. And there was one camper who he'd been very homesick, so it was quite a challenge to get him to engage, and he was one of my campers. It was a bit of a challenge to get him to engage and kind of, let go of home a little bit and try and enjoy himself as much as possible. So he actually turned around in this fire pit in front of everyone and kind of expressed how grateful he was that I was his counsellor and how I'd helped him through that experience. And that was enough for me. The waterwork started immediately. I could not hold myself together. So those are the kind of rewarding experiences that you'll probably never get from anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you travel after camp when you finished? Did you stay out in the US for a little bit?
I did, yeah. So I actually met a friend who had also been to camp through AmeriCamp, but gone to a different camp. And we met up. So we did South Carolina, we did San Fran, LA, and finished in New York and went home.
Oh, fun.
So I made the most of it.
What was your favourite place that you went to?
I would say San Francisco.
Yeah, I love it there.
Just the vibe. There was so much to do, and the culture and the food, just everything.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I liked LA, but I felt like I wasn't as like, wow, it's Hollywood as I thought it was going to be. I was just a bit like, oh, like it looks exactly how I imagined it to.
It does for sure, and it was too big for me. It's such I was not prepared for how big LA was.
And the traffic is so bad. Like, it's like you could be having the best day and then be in traffic for like 2 hours and be like, the vibes are just like gone. Do you think, so since obviously when you initially went to camp 2016, that's about kind of 6-7 years ago now, sort of since then you obviously came back, worked in the AmeriCamp office, and you've kind of done like a lot kind of throughout the company in different roles, but you've also did a lot of kind of personal travel and things like that. You've been out in Asia for a lot of last year. Do you think camp kind of helped give you that sort of travel bug? I know that was the case for myself, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I knew that it was in there somewhere, and AmeriCamp was the first taste for me of realizing that I was passionate about the travel industry. I was passionate about actually traveling and tourism. It was that stepping stone for sure to be able to work abroad, to see somewhere else and experience that culture was 100% what got me hooked. And to be honest, it gave me that experience and it allowed me to mature a little bit. Going back to what I said previously about the intensity of camp for me, that allowed me to mature across that summer, because you don't have time to think about yourself.
Yeah.
You're too busy thinking about the campers and making sure that they're having a good time. So as part of that, I personally let go of some of the things that I was caught up about myself. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? To have 2 to 3 months of not thinking about yourself definitely gave me that boost into finding my direction in general, I guess.
Yeah, I think when you're at camp, you're definitely in a bubble. So it's almost like anything that was maybe a concern or like an anxiety before just kind of like stays at home where it belongs, and you just kind of get to explore you a little bit more as well.
100%, yeah.
So this is great. I think we've like all learned a little bit more about you and about kind of Jewish camps and sort of squashing those misconceptions, which is always great to hear. So just to kind of finish on, really, what advice would you give someone applying to the programme for summer 2024 and sort of exploring those kind of different camp options, maybe considering going to a religious camp? What is some kind of final notes of advice you would give them? Yeah,
so the biggest thing would be to say, don't narrow your options just to traditional camps or specialist camps. Don't fall into those ideas of those preconceptions of what a Jewish camp's going to be like, or a Christian camp, or even any other type of camp that's not traditional. Don't fall into that trap, because they will still be just as good, if not an even better experience. For me, I would not have got that same experience had I have gone to a traditional camp. I learned a lot about the Jewish religion, and it was great. I loved every part of it, and I wasn't expecting that, but it was just as fun, and I had just as good of a time. So yeah, I would definitely say to people, don't get caught up on that. Keep your options open. There's so many more camps that you open yourself up to by saying yes to religious camps and any other camps.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the pod. It's been great to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
If you guys have any other kind of questions, hot topics of things that you want us to chat about, anything that will help you with your applications for 2024, let us know. But we will be back next week.